at Ezekiel's welcome back banquet after returning to the country. My wife Angelica kept a cold expression the entire time. After several rounds of drinks, the atmosphere gradually became lively. Ezekiel raised his glass and toasted everyone. "Thank you all for coming to my welcome banquet." Everyone lifted their glasses in response, except Angelica, who sat there without moving. I nudged her, and only then did she reluctantly raise her glass. Someone asked, "Ezekiel, now that you're back, are you leaving again?" Ezekiel smiled and shook his head. "No, I'm staying." As he spoke, his eyes were fixed on Angelica, trying to catch even the slightest change in her expression. But he was destined to be disappointed. Angelica didn't even look at him. The situation became a bit awkward. The classmates quickly changed the subject, asking about Ezekiel's life abroad. As soon as the gathering ended, Angelica grabbed my hand and pulled me outside without even saying goodbye. All I could do was smile and bid farewell to everyone. Although I wore a smile, my heart felt ice cold. Chapter 1. That night, lying in bed and staring at Angelica's back, I finally asked, "Honey, do you still have feelings for Ezekiel?" Angelica reacted like a firecracker that had just been lit, shooting upright in an instant. "Leonardo, make yourself clear. What do you mean I still have feelings for Ezekiel?" I didn't argue with her, nor did I say anything more. I just looked at her calmly. After a long moment of eye contact, Angelica was the first to back down. She turned her face away, muttered something about it being ridiculous, then grabbed a pillow and got out of bed. "I'll sleep in the guest room. You should calm down." With that, she left the bedroom. Looking at the empty space beside me, I couldn't help but sigh. She was right, I really did need to think things through. Angelica and I were college classmates, but back then, we didn't interact much. I had only met her a few times at gatherings, as Ezekiel's friend. At the time, Ezekiel was basically the campus heartthrob of the computer science department, while Angelica was the beauty of the law department. Many people on campus were obsessed with shipping them as a couple. Unfortunately, good things don't last. Even such a beautiful relationship couldn't escape the curse that graduation season is also breakup season. After graduating, Ezekiel planned to go abroad, but Angelica's family had already arranged a position for her at a law firm. Neither the rich young master nor the princess was willing to compromise. In the end, harsh words were exchanged, and they turned against each other completely. As their friend, I had witnessed their happiness. So when they broke up, all I could feel was regret. After graduation, I joined a major tech company. I didn't meet Angelica again until 4 years later. By then, she had become the legal counsel for our company. Reuniting with someone familiar naturally made us both delighted. After finishing our work, Angelica invited me to a Western restaurant downstairs to catch up. I gladly accepted. That day, we talked about many things from the past. There was nostalgia on Angelica's face, but also a hint of melancholy. At one point, I casually asked whether she was still in contact with Ezekiel. The ever-smiling Angelica suddenly changed her expression. "Leonardo, don't ever bring up that name in front of me again. Just thinking about him makes me sick." Her reaction startled me. Looks like when love fails, it really can turn into hate. Chapter 2. Ever since Angelica became the legal counsel for our company, we naturally had more chances to meet. Whenever she came to the company for work, she would always look for me to chat or invite me out for a meal. Before long, we became close friends who could talk about anything. Angelica came from a wealthy family and was highly capable. Just 4 years after graduating, she had already started her own law firm. My family background was decent, not extremely rich, but we lived comfortably. However, we both faced the same problem: pressure from our families to get married. Every time this topic came up, we would exchange a glance and shake our heads with a bitter smile. At 29, Angelica tentatively asked me, "Leonardo, how about we just make do and get together?" I was stunned for quite a while before snapping back. "What did you just say?" Angelica rolled her eyes at me and emphasized her words. "I'm saying, let's be a couple." I didn't reject her outright. I actually started to consider the possibility. Working at a major internet company, I didn't have many chances to meet women, and most of the women around me were straightforward, no-nonsense tech types, not really my type. On the other hand, Angelica had a great background, was beautiful, and had both high IQ and EQ. She really was a good option. It's just that, I looked at her seriously and asked a question. "Angelica, if Ezekiel comes back, will your feelings waver?" Angelica shook her head firmly. "He's been dead to me for a long time. Don't worry." Since she said that, I had no more concerns. What I'm afraid of is that there is a grave in her heart, burying a widow. After we confirmed our relationship, we skipped the getting to know each other phase. We directly arranged for both families to meet and began preparing for the wedding. Everything went smoothly, until the day before the wedding, when Angelica received a gift from Ezekiel. It was an exquisite sapphire pendant and a letter. I asked her if she wanted to see what he had written. Angelica sneered and shook her head. She tore the letter into pieces and threw it into the trash along with the pendant. I was satisfied with how she handled it, though I couldn't help but feel her reaction might have been a bit extreme. But it was just a minor episode. Our wedding proceeded without a hitch. At 30, Angelica and I got married. In the second year of our marriage, we had a daughter, Bella. Our daughter was well behaved. She inherited Angelica's looks, graceful and beautiful. Her personality was like mine, calm and easygoing. After 10 years of marriage, Angelica and I had a great relationship, and our careers were thriving. I became a senior executive at the company. With the support of her father, her law firm ranked among the top in City A. Our daughter enjoyed the best educational resources and consistently ranked among the top students. I was very satisfied with my life and felt that it had all been worth it. I had planned that once our daughter went to college, Angelica and I would travel all over the country, experience different scenery, and truly enjoy life. But now it seems, life is full of unexpected turns. I have no choice but to start planning the second half of my life all over again. Chapter 3. Early the next morning, Angelica left the house right after breakfast. After dropping our daughter off at school, I drove to the company. As soon as I entered my office, I saw Ezekiel waiting inside. The moment he saw me, he greeted me with a big smile. "Leonardo, you're finally here. I've been waiting for you for ages." I smiled on the surface, but inside I was extremely displeased. This guy really has no sense of boundaries. Who let him into my office? His enthusiasm only made me more uncomfortable. We hadn't been in touch for over a decade. Where was all this warmth coming from? Seeing him open his arms to hug me, I quickly reached out and stopped him. "Hello, Ezekiel. What do you need from me?" Ezekiel froze for a moment, clearly not used to my cold and distant attitude. He gave an awkward laugh, trying to smooth things over. "I forgot this is China. Hugging when you meet isn't really a thing here." I shrugged, neither agreeing nor disagreeing. After sitting down, Ezekiel rubbed his hands together and said in a flattering tone, "Old classmate, I've joined your company. Could you talk to HR and get me transferred to a different position? After all, I studied abroad. Isn't it a bit beneath me to just be assigned a technical role?" I frowned and rejected him outright. "That's not something I can help you with." Ezekiel's hand rubbing stopped, and his expression darkened. "Leonardo, I've asked around. You're a vice president. Getting me a different position should be as easy as saying a word." He wasn't wrong, but we weren't close enough for that. I straightened my face and said seriously, "Ezekiel, I really can't help you with this. Company policy, whether you studied abroad or graduated from a top university, you have to prove your value. Of course, if you can prove yourself, the company's resources will naturally be allocated to you. Just work hard and deliver results. The company won't treat you unfairly." My promises sounded tempting and perfect, but Ezekiel isn't some naive rookie fresh out of the real world. He looked at me deeply, then left in a huff. From his eyes, I could see resentment, and even a hint of challenge. I shook my head helplessly and curled my lips into a faint smile. Looks like he didn't come with good intentions. Still, I didn't think much of it. He was in a technical role, while I managed sales. There was little overlap in our work. Besides, what could he possibly do to me? Shaking off the messy thoughts, I threw myself into a busy afternoon of work. In the afternoon, just after finishing my break, I was about to head to the pantry for some water when the technical director, Sam, rushed over and blocked my way. "Leo, where the hell did the company find this guy? Some kind of untouchable prince or what?" The moment we met, Sam started complaining. I asked him to sit down and explain slowly. As soon as he sat, Sam went off without holding back. "That new guy, Ezekiel, every time I assign him work, he keeps dodging it." I asked him to write a piece of code. Not only was the logic a mess, it was full of bugs, it wouldn't even run. When I criticized him, he pulled your name out to pressure me. How am I supposed to get any work done like this? I sighed. That's just how Sam is, straightforward and blunt. If it were someone else, they probably wouldn't have come directly to me. They would have gone to HR first to check whether Ezekiel got into the company through my connections, then decided what to do next. I patted Sam on the shoulder reassuringly. "Sam, we're just classmates, and we haven't been in touch for over 10 years. I don't know what his technical skills are like. As for how you deal with him, that's up to you. It has nothing to do with me." Sam raised an eyebrow. "Really?" I gave him a firm look. "Really? We're nothing more than former classmates. You don't need to worry about my feelings." Sam left happily. When I got off work and passed by the technical department, I could hear Sam yelling from far away. Through the glass, I saw him pointing at Ezekiel and scolding him. "You can't do this. You can't do that. Did you fake your overseas master's degree or what? You sound impressive on paper, but when it comes to actual work, you're completely useless. If I scattered some rice on the keyboard, even a chicken could code better than you." Sam's words were indeed harsh. Looking at Ezekiel, head lowered, face flushed red, I honestly felt a bit sorry for him. Most people in technical roles were young guys in their 20s. As a 40-year-old man, being scolded like that by Sam in front of them, it was humiliating. Still, I couldn't help but feel puzzled. Back in college, Ezekiel's grades were actually decent. What had he been doing all these years abroad to end up this incompetent? And his family wasn't poor either. There was no need for him to endure this kind of humiliation just for a salary. I couldn't figure it out, so I stopped thinking about it. Humming a tune, I drove home. Chapter 4. When I got home, my daughter was doing her homework. I put down my bag and sat beside her. "Sweetheart, where's Mom?" My daughter smiled and pointed toward the walk-in closet. I patted her head, reminded her to sit up straight and not lean too close to her book, then walked toward the closet. Leaning against the doorframe, I watched Angelica putting on makeup. "Got a date tonight?" I asked. Without turning around, Angelica replied, A newly established company wants to outsource their legal work. I'm meeting them tonight to discuss it." I didn't say anything, but doubt began to stir in my mind. Angelica rarely wore makeup, even at important events. She would only put on light makeup, but now, with a red dress and bold, glamorous makeup. It was obvious she had deliberately dressed up. After finishing her makeup, Angelica hurried out. When she passed by our daughter, she didn't even pause. Normally, before going out, she would kiss our daughter on the forehead, but this time, she didn't even say goodbye. The more I thought about it, the more something felt off. I told the nanny to remind our daughter to go to bed on time, and to warm her a cup of milk before sleep. Then I said goodbye to my daughter and hurried out, driving after Angelica. It didn't take long before I spotted her car. I followed behind at a distance, not too close, not too far. I wanted to see who she was meeting. Soon, Angelica's car stopped in front of a Western restaurant. After she went in, I parked my car and followed her inside. Once I located where she was sitting, I took a seat nearby. I called over a waiter and ordered a cup of coffee, quietly waiting for the person she was meeting to show up. Not long after, the restaurant door was pushed open. Ezekiel walked in, dressed in a well-tailored suit, his hair meticulously styled. He looked like a successful man. He scanned the room, and the moment he saw Angelica, his eyes lit up. He quickly walked toward her. My anger surged straight to my head. So this was the business meeting Angelica had mentioned. Forcing myself to suppress the urge to flip the table, I calmed myself down. Now wasn't the time to lose control. I needed to hear what they were going to say. Soon, their voices came from behind me. Ezekiel asked cautiously, "Angelica, have you been doing well these past years?" Angelica said nothing. Through the mirror on the restaurant wall, I could see her cold expression. "Angelica." This time when I came back, Angelica raised her hand and cut him off. "Let's skip the reminiscing. Didn't you ask me here to talk about your divorce case?" The smile on Ezekiel's face gradually faded. He lowered his head in frustration. "Yeah. I'm tied up in a lawsuit right now. I shouldn't be bothering you, but honestly, I don't know who else can help me besides you." Ezekiel looked dejected. And although Angelica's face remained cold, there was unmistakable sympathy in her eyes. She couldn't hide it. Ezekiel sighed and looked at her earnestly. "Angelica, you know, back then, my parents forced me to leave, and they also forced me to marry that woman. Now my family's gone bankrupt. That woman kicked me out and demanded a clean break, left me with nothing. Angelica, the truth is, I've never forgotten you all these years. Back then, I really had no choice." "Enough." Angelica cut him off sharply. People in the restaurant turned to look at her, realizing she had lost her composure. Angelica's face turned cold again, and she fell silent. After a long moment, she spoke once more. "Ezekiel, back then I begged you not to go abroad. I begged you not to get engaged to that woman, but you threw me away like I meant nothing. Everything happening to you now is your karma." My heart skipped a beat. Back then, I had thought they broke up simply because they couldn't agree on going abroad. I never expected that Angelica was the one who had been dumped. So even someone as proud as Angelica had once humbled herself and begged for someone. It's just that person wasn't me. Chapter 5. There was a bitter taste in my heart, but I still wanted to know exactly how Angelica felt about Ezekiel now. Was it only hatred, or were there still lingering feelings? Ezekiel looked anxious as he tried to explain. "Angelica, listen to me. I really regret it. There hasn't been a single day all these years that I haven't thought about you." Angelica let out a cold snort. "Ezekiel, for the sake of having known each other, I can help you with this lawsuit, but that's all. Don't get any ridiculous ideas." With that, she stood up, ready to leave. Ezekiel panicked and grabbed her. "Let go." Angelica's voice was icy. "I won't. I finally caught you again. I'm never letting go." His voice carried a hint of tears. I burned with anger inside. "Angelica, if you slap him right now, I'll forgive you for lying to me today." But that expectation was never fulfilled. Angelica was pulled down by Ezekiel and ended up sitting beside him. Seeing her pouting stubbornly, her eyes slightly red, the scene felt especially unbearable. To outsiders, They looked like a couple in the middle of a lover's quarrel. There was no need to keep watching. I stood up and walked out of the restaurant. The night wind was cold. My heart was colder. After 10 years of marriage, Angelica and I had been perfectly in sync in every aspect. I had never imagined that the cliché, when the ex comes back, the current partner always loses, would play out in my life. And back when we decided to be together, I had clearly asked her whether she still had feelings for Ezekiel. What had she said back then? She said Ezekiel was already dead to her. Heh, then what is this now? A resurrection. What's even more ridiculous is, Angelica was actually wavering. When I got home, my daughter was already asleep. Looking at her peaceful face, I struggled. Should I endure this for her sake? But the more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Why should I endure it? Why should the one who made the mistake get to live freely and happily? And my daughter and I would have to endure a suffocating, toxic life. Is our life not a life too? Gritting my teeth, my mind began to race. When Angelica came back, there was still a smile on her face. Did the meeting go well? I suddenly asked. My voice startled her. After seeing me sitting on the sofa, she rolled her eyes, ignored me, and walked straight to the bathroom. I calculated the time. She got home only 10 minutes later than I did. Nothing could have happened in those 10 minutes. My heart settled slightly. That night, we lay back to back in bed. I asked, "Don't you have anything you want to tell me?" Angelica turned over and said casually, "Tell you what." I sighed inwardly. Even now, I was still hoping she would come clean on her own, still trying to give her a chance. How naive of me. It's true, those who value relationships deeply are the ones most easily hurt by them. Forget it. Since she has nothing to say, then let it be. The next day at work, I called a friend abroad. I asked him to help me investigate what Ezekiel had been doing all these years overseas. I needed to know why he came back and what he wanted. Only then could I prepare in advance. I also bought a tracking device and installed it in Angelica's car. I needed to know her every move. I couldn't just end up wearing the humiliation of being cheated on without even knowing what was happening. Of course, I couldn't put something like that on her directly, but the car was marital property. Tracking my own car was completely reasonable. I had to thank Angelica for that. Being a lawyer, she would often tell me about various cases. At the same time, I sorted out all our shared assets and hired a lawyer to draft a divorce agreement. Once everything was ready, I quietly waited for the right moment to confront her. During this period, Ezekiel didn't have an easy time at the company. I went to Sam and asked him to put more pressure on Ezekiel. Sam happily agreed. Soon, information from abroad came back. Looking at the documents in my hands, I let out a cold laugh. Angelica, you really brought this upon yourself. You made it through last time. Let's see if you can survive this one too. Chapter 6. When I pushed open the door to Angelica's office, she was sitting together with Ezekiel. The moment she saw me holding a document folder, panic filled her face. "Honey, why are you here?" I looked at her with a smile. "What? Your lover can come, but I, the legal husband, can't." Angelica's face instantly turned red. Ezekiel stood up and waved at me casually. "Leonardo, you've misunderstood. Angelica and I are discussing my divorce case." I looked at him mockingly. "Did I ask you to speak?" Seeing my expression turn cold, Angelica hurried over. "Honey, you really misunderstood. I'm the attorney handling Ezekiel's divorce case." That only made me angrier. "Angelica, your client sure has a lot of pull, needing the boss herself to personally handle his case." After being repeatedly confronted, Angelica became both embarrassed and angry. "Leonardo, stop slandering us. We're just lawyer and client." I looked at her provocatively. "Oh really? Someone like him is your client? What exactly is he even hiring you for?" Ezekiel stepped forward and stood in front of Angelica, shielding her, speaking in a lecturing tone. "Leonardo, calm down. You're not young anymore. Why are you still so impulsive? Fuck. This moss that's been pissed on by a dog still dares to pop out and pretend to be a mushroom." He even started lecturing me. I threw a punch straight into Ezekiel's eye. He let out a scream and crouched down, clutching his face. I didn't stop. I kicked him to the ground, then followed with several hard kicks to his torso until he couldn't get back up. Only when I stopped did Angelica finally react. She cried out, "Leonardo, how can you hit someone? That's illegal." I ignored her completely and took out my phone. "Officer, you can come in now. The suspect has been subdued." The door opened, and several police officers walked in, bringing with them an older foreign woman. Without another word, they handcuffed Ezekiel. The lead officer shook my hand gratefully. "Sir, thank you for your cooperation. This wouldn't have been possible without you." I quickly smiled politely. "It's no trouble. Cooperating with the police is every citizen's duty." The officer glanced at the stunned Angelica. "Lawyer Angelica, please come with us to the station as well. We need your cooperation for some matters." Angelica was too shocked to speak. She nodded stiffly and followed the police out. In the interrogation room, Angelica finally learned the full truth. There was no divorce case, no being kicked out of a marriage with nothing. Everything Ezekiel had said was a lie. The foreign woman was actually Ezekiel's girlfriend overseas. After swindling all her money, Ezekiel fled back to the country. She reported him to the police, and Interpol issued a warrant for his arrest. When I first received the information, I could hardly believe Ezekiel had fallen this far. After all, back in college, he had been a decent student, but according to the records, after going abroad, he was dazzled by a life of luxury and completely lost himself. His family had originally been well off, but after emigrating, several failed investments drained their wealth. On top of that, Ezekiel spent money recklessly. Within just a few years, they went bankrupt. Unable to bear the blow, his parents both passed away. After their deaths, Ezekiel completely let himself go. Before long, he burned through all his remaining savings. Fortunately for him, he had good looks, and wealthy older women abroad were quite taken with his type. So he began sweet-talking and deceiving them to get money. But this time, he went too far. He drained that woman of all her assets, and she reported him. The day I finished reviewing the information, I contacted the police immediately. After explaining the situation, they asked me to cooperate in the arrest. I was more than willing. At the same time, I called his wealthy girlfriend overseas. At first, she didn't believe me, but after I sent her photos of Ezekiel at work, she finally believed it. She said she would come over right away. Chapter 7. Today, the rich woman arrived. After meeting up with the police, they decided the timing was right. With both witnesses and evidence in place, there was no way Ezekiel could deny anything. When we got to Angelica's company, I discussed the plan with the police. After all, Angelica is my wife. I was worried that if the police suddenly showed up, Ezekiel might panic and lash out, putting her in danger. So I suggested that I go in first and subdue him. Of course, that was just an excuse. I simply wanted to beat him up and vent my anger. At first, the police refused, but after I insisted repeatedly, they finally agreed. Standing outside the interrogation room, looking at the dejected Ezekiel inside, I felt a sense of satisfaction. You could run wild overseas, doing whatever you wanted, no one cared, but you just had to come back and stir things up, messing with Angelica and trying to ruin my family. Then don't blame me for destroying you completely. When the police brought Angelica out, I didn't even glance at her. I walked straight out of the station. She kept her head down, following closely behind me step by step. When getting into the car, she tried to sit in the back seat. I barked at her once, and she obediently sat in the passenger seat. On the way home, she tried several times to speak, but didn't know how to begin. I ignored her. When we got home, our daughter was still awake. I stayed with her to finish her homework, played with her for a while, and only then sent her back to her room. Throughout the entire time, I didn't spare Angelica a single glance. Perhaps out of guilt, Angelica stood silently by the sofa, like a student who had made a mistake. Only after our daughter fell asleep did I go downstairs to the living room. As soon as I sat down, Angelica walked over and crouched in front of me. Hesitantly, she spoke. "Honey." "I'm sorry." I said nothing. I took out the divorce agreement I had prepared long ago from my briefcase and pushed it toward her expressionlessly. "Take a look. If there's no problem, sign it." The moment she saw the words divorce agreement, Angelica panicked. She grabbed my hand, pleading repeatedly. "Honey, I don't want a divorce. I didn't do anything to betray you. You can't abandon me." I had originally planned for us to part on relatively good terms, each going our own way, but her shameless denial completely ignited my anger. Glancing at our daughter's tightly shut bedroom door, I could no longer suppress the fury inside me. I slammed the agreement against her face. "Didn't betray me." Angelica, 3 days ago at the restaurant, who was holding hands with Ezekiel while eating. 2 days ago at the park, who was hugging Ezekiel. Do you think as long as you didn't sleep together, you didn't betray me? You're fucking disgusting. Angelica's face turned deathly pale. She was a lawyer. She knew I wouldn't make accusations without evidence. If I said it, it meant I had proof. Angelica collapsed, sitting on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. I shot her an impatient glare. "Keep it down. What if you wake our daughter?" Hearing that, Angelica stopped crying, as if grabbing onto a lifeline. "Honey, we can't get a divorce. Bella can't lose a complete family." To be fair, although Angelica was a terrible partner, she truly loved our daughter. All these years, whether in resources or companionship, she had done her part well, but our daughter shouldn't become her excuse to bind me and maintain this broken marriage. I shook my head lightly. Bella is already 10. She has her own sense of right and wrong. I believe she'll understand our decision. Angelica wiped her tears messily, a trace of determination flashing in her eyes. "Honey, let me tell you, if you insist on divorcing, I will never give up our daughter. I'm a lawyer. I'm confident I can win custody." She was trying to use our daughter to control me. I smiled. Chapter 8. Angelica looked confused. Honey, what are you smiling about? I picked up the divorce agreement and handed it back to her. Lawyer Angelica, take a closer look before you talk to me. She didn't understand what I meant. After taking the agreement, she began reading it carefully. When she saw that I had given up custody of our daughter, she froze. She looked at me in disbelief. Leonardo, are you crazy? Just to divorce me? You're even giving up Bella? I nodded firmly, holding the agreement. Angelica started crying and laughing at the same time, almost like she had lost her mind. I watched her coldly. In truth, I understood her reaction. She believed that no matter what, I would never give up our daughter. But she was wrong. If our daughter stayed with me, she wouldn't be as happy as she would be with Angelica. I had thought about this for a long time. I wasn't a local in City A. While I had some connections and resources, they were nothing compared to Angelica's. From the way Angelica cared for our daughter, it was clear she would never let her suffer. More importantly, even though Angelica was clinging to me now, refusing to divorce, once she recovered, she would inevitably start planning for her future. With her looks and wealth, there would be no shortage of suitors. If our daughter didn't stay with her, then after Angelica built a new family, she would gradually drift away from Bella. I couldn't guarantee that my daughter would always have a mother who loved her, but I could guarantee that she would always have a father who loved her. So after weighing everything, I chose to let Angelica have custody, no matter how painful it was. After crying for a long time, Angelica finally calmed down and sat on the floor in defeat. Honey, even knowing that nothing happened between me and Ezekiel, you still insist on divorcing me? I nodded firmly. Yes, the divorce is non-negotiable. Angelica sighed, picked up a pen, and signed her name on the agreement. Watching her hand tremble as she held the pen, I didn't feel good either, but there was no other way. There was a time when I believed we would go from love to growing old together, but the temptations along the way were too strong. In the end, she failed to hold the line and got off track, and we could only part ways here. Angelica handed me the signed agreement, but she clutched one corner tightly, refusing to let go. It took quite some effort before I managed to pull it away. Angelica started crying again. Honey, can I make a few requests? I said coldly. Go ahead. She looked at me pleadingly. Don't tell our parents about the divorce yet. I nodded. Okay. Seeing me agree, she made a second request. Don't tell Bella either. I thought for a moment. I can agree to that, until she finishes elementary school. Angelica sighed, then cautiously made a third request. Honey, can we divorce but still live in the same house? I laughed in disbelief. What kind of fantasy was she living in? If we divorced but still lived together, how would that be any different from not divorcing? Angelica, you're asking for quite a lot. She lifted her head, eyes filled with pleading. This is the last one, please? I shook my head. It's already written in the agreement. This house goes to you. The apartment downtown goes to me. After we register the divorce tomorrow, I'll move out. After saying that, I ignored her. Back in the bedroom, I started packing my belongings. There was a lot to pack, after all. This had been my home for 10 years. Angelica stood at the doorway, silently watching. She didn't dare speak, nor did she dare try to stop me. In the end, her presence annoyed me, so I simply shut the bedroom door. Chapter 9. Early the next morning, on the way to take Bella to school, I told a lie. I said there was an important project out of town and that I'd be on a business trip for a while. Looking at my teary-eyed daughter, my heart felt like it was being torn apart. At parting, knowing I wouldn't see her for a long time, I hugged and kissed her over and over again. On the drive back home, the more I thought about it, the angrier I became. It was all Angelica's fault. She had a perfectly good life, yet she just had to stir things up. That so-called Prince Charming from back then, was he really that unforgettable? By the time Angelica got into the car, I even had the urge to hit her. Seeing the hostility on my face, Angelica didn't even know what she had done wrong this time. But now she was terrified of me and didn't dare say a word. She could only sneak glances at me cautiously. At the Civil Affairs Bureau, we took a number, registered, and completed all the procedures. Then I drove Angelica back home. The entire way, I didn't say a single word. After getting home, I started loading my luggage into the car. When I carried the last suitcase out the door, Angelica, who had been standing there the whole time, grabbed my arm. Honey, can you not leave? I shook her hand off. No. After a moment of stalemate, Angelica finally gave in. Honey, can I ask you one last question? Why can you handle everything so calmly? So calm, it feels like you don't love me at all. I set the suitcase down and looked at her seriously. If I were 20 and faced something like this, I might have grabbed a knife and gone after you both. If I were 30, I might have slapped you a few times and told you to get lost. But I'm 40 now. I have to plan for the rest of my life. It's only in middle age that you realize fighting with anyone is just draining yourself. Nothing is more important than living the rest of your life well. After saying that, I picked up the suitcase again and got into the car. After moving into the apartment downtown, I began living alone. During the day, I worked. After work, I'd find somewhere to eat something I liked and have a couple of drinks by myself. At night, I video called my daughter on time. Then I lay in bed, alone, enduring the withdrawal symptoms of divorce. Life is like this. While you enjoy the happiness it brings, you also have to bear the pain it gives. Everyone lives half in quiet contentment, half in the chaos of everyday life. The withdrawal was worse than I expected. I loved Angelica deeply. During our 10 years of marriage, she had given a lot to this family and had been very good to both me and our daughter. And precisely because she had been so good, I couldn't tolerate her emotional wavering. After enduring it for a month, the day finally came for us to officially collect our divorce certificate. When I saw Angelica at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau, she was staring at me intensely. After not seeing her for a month, I realized I missed her a little. After we got the certificate and walked out, Angelica finally spoke. "Leonardo, you've lost weight." I nodded. In truth, she had lost even more weight. Her once full figure had noticeably thinned. Angelica continued, "If it's convenient, come back and visit Bella sometime. She misses you a lot." I looked at her, questioning. Angelica smiled with a sense of release. I told her about our divorce. "You were right, she's capable of understanding right from wrong." On the way back, I could barely suppress the urge to see my daughter. When I finally saw her, I pulled her tightly into my arms. Angelica and I spent the entire day playing with her. Only after dinner, after promising Bella that I'd come see her again next weekend, did I leave. When Angelica walked me to the door, she glanced at the dark night outside. There was a hint of hope in her eyes. "How about, you don't go tonight? It's late. It's not safe. Just stay here for the night." I rolled my eyes at her. "What kind of fantasy are you having?" Angelica smiled shyly, but as she smiled, tears began to fall. A wave of bitterness rose in my chest. I quickly got into the car and drove away. Chapter 10. Half a year after separating from Angelica, my life gradually got back on track. The withdrawal symptoms were no longer as intense. Things on Angelica's side were pretty much as I had expected. She began to focus her energy on our daughter. She stopped working overtime and pushed off whatever she could at work. She spent more time with our daughter, drawing with her, playing the piano with her, and taking her horseback riding. Angelica was very willing to invest in our daughter, even going so far as to use her father's connections. She arranged for our daughter to go out, participate in exchange programs, and broaden her horizons. I spent almost every weekend with our daughter. Getting along with Angelica no longer felt as awkward. It was more like being friends. Until winter break, when our daughter said she wanted to stay with me for a while, I agreed without a second thought. On the first night after she moved in, while I was tucking her into bed, she looked at me pitifully. "Dad, can we let Mom come in?" I looked at her in surprise. "How do you know Mom is outside?" She raised her wrist, showing me her smartwatch. "She sent me a message. She said she's been standing outside for a long time. It's really cold out there, and she's almost frozen." I gritted my teeth in anger, but I couldn't refuse. Angelica was truly shameless, using our daughter to guilt-trip me like this. I forced a smile. "All right, Dad will go open the door now." Our daughter nodded happily. "Dad, go ahead. I'm going to sleep." After saying that, she tightly shut her eyes. After leaving her room, I stormed toward the door. The moment I opened it, Angelica squeezed her way in. "Leonardo, it's so cold outside, I'm freezing to death." As she spoke, she rushed toward my bedroom. By the time I got there, she was already lying on the bed, pretending to be asleep. I laughed in exasperation. "Angelica, you have two choices, sleep on the couch, or get out." Angelica pouted, reluctantly climbed out of bed, and went to the living room. Dejected, I lay in bed, breathing in that once familiar scent, unable to fall asleep for a long time. It had been almost a year. This house finally felt a bit more like a home again. If only Bella could stay here forever. Just as I was lost in thought, the door was gently pushed open, and a curvy figure slipped inside. I watched Angelica quietly climb onto the bed. I closed my eyes and pretended to be asleep, deciding not to argue with her. After lying down beside me, Angelica behaved herself, even softening her breathing. I sighed. "Fine, let her sleep on the bed." But unexpectedly, 10 minutes later, she started getting more and more excessive, inching closer and closer to me, muttering that she was cold. I ignored her. Then she began draping her arms and legs over me, rubbing against me. I cleared my throat. She immediately froze. After a while, a flattering, coaxing voice sounded. "Leonardo, you're not asleep yet." Hee. I said nothing. I opened my eyes and stared at her in silence. Angelica raised her right hand and swore, "I promise, I'll just hold you. I won't move around." I closed my eyes again. "Fine, do as you like." But I didn't expect that this kind of promise isn't just something men use to fool women. Women can use it to fool men too. Under Angelica's teasing, I still failed to hold my bottom line. The next day, Angelica looked radiant and got up early to make breakfast. While eating, Bella kept looking at me, then at Angelica, smiling nonstop. Curious, I asked, "Sweetie, what are you laughing at?" Bella pouted. "I'm happy. The three of us can sit together and eat again as a family." "Dad, you don't know, after you left, every time we ate, Mom would stare at your seat in a daze, and at night, she would hide in the bedroom and cry." I clenched my teeth, put down my bowl, then I grabbed Angelica, who was secretly smiling, and pulled her into the bedroom. "What do you mean by this? She's still so young. How can you use her like that?" Faced with my accusation, Angelica spread her hands. "She's just telling the truth. What can I do? I can't exactly make her lie." I gritted my teeth in anger, but had nothing to say, and just like that, Angelica stayed at my place for a whole month. In her words, even if we didn't remarry, she would still occupy this position, so no one else could take advantage of an opening. And gradually, I accepted it. On the long road of life, everyone is bound to stray at times, to make mistakes. I only hope that after this upheaval, we can both recognize our own flaws, correct our paths, and walk once again toward happiness.